My wife cheated with my best friend, then forged my signature to sell our family home for $500, $0. Now she's claiming half the profits and sending me threatening legal notices over a debt I never owed. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story like this, but life throws you curveballs when you least expect it. One minute, everything seems fine, and the next, your whole world is turned upside down. Let me start by saying that I thought I knew my wife, Lisa. We'd been together for over 10 years, married for 6. She always seemed like the perfect wife, smart, beautiful, ambitious. We had a nice house, a good life, and I genuinely believed we were happy. At least I did, until I started noticing small things that didn't add up. It started with her late nights at work, or so she said. She'd tell me she was working late or meeting with clients. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I noticed she was acting more secretive with her phone. She'd hide it when I came into the room, or suddenly leave her phone unlocked when she went to the bathroom. Little things, but enough to make me uneasy. I brushed it off, assuming I was just being paranoid, but deep down I knew something was off. Then came the strange texts. I saw her phone one night when she left it on the kitchen counter. There were messages from a number I didn't recognize, and they weren't work-related. They were flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up. I felt my stomach drop. I looked closer and I saw a name attached, Jake. That was her, or at least that's what she told me. I didn't confront her right away, but I kept the number in my mind. A few days later, I decided to do a little digging. I checked her emails, her social media. Nothing concrete at first, but I noticed she'd been deleting messages, clearing her browsing history. It was obvious she was hiding something. Then I found a receipt for a hotel booking in her name, paid with her card, for a night when she claimed she was working late. The hotel was downtown, about an hour away. That was the first real sign that she might be seeing someone else. But the biggest shock came when I came home unexpectedly one evening. I'd been feeling uneasy all day, and I decided to surprise her at her office. When I got there, I saw her in the parking lot getting into a car with Jake. They were kissing, full on making out. I watched, stunned. My mind refused to accept what I was seeing. My wife, my partner, was cheating on me with my best friend. The guy I trusted the most, the guy I'd known since college. I stood there frozen, trying to process it all. I felt a rush of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she lie to me for months, maybe even years? And Jake, my supposed best friend, was right there betraying me too. I wanted to run over, shout at them, but I couldn't move. I just watched as they separated and she got into her car, leaving him behind. I followed her in my car that night, heart pounding, trying to figure out what to do next. That's when I started noticing the real damage. She was acting even more dismissive, telling me I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. But her actions spoke louder than words. She was sneaking around, lying, hiding things. It was clear she'd been planning this for a while. And then, unexpectedly, I stumbled upon something even worse. She had forged my signature to sell our house. I found out she sold it for $500, $0, claiming I authorized it, which was a complete lie. I never signed anything. She'd lied, manipulated, and now she was claiming half of the profits. That's when I knew I had to do something. I realized I was dealing with someone who would do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying everything I cared about. The betrayal cut deep, but it also ignited a fire inside me. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I needed to find out how much she'd taken, what she'd done with the money, and how to fight back. That's where I am now, trying to piece everything together and figure out what my next move should be. After I saw her with Jake that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My mind kept replaying that scene over and over like some sick movie I couldn't turn off. The betrayal felt like a punch to the gut every time I thought about it. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I was so blind to what was happening right under my nose. I had trusted her, loved her, built my life around her. And now I was left with nothing but questions and a growing rage I didn't know how to handle. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed answers. I sat her down, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside I was boiling. I asked her outright if she was cheating. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She looked at me with those big eyes, all innocent and hurt, and said, "What are you talking about? You're crazy." I would never do that to you." That lie made me want to scream. I knew she was lying, but I also knew I had to be smart. I didn't want to accuse her without proof, but I had enough evidence to make her sweat. I pressed her further, and that's when she started flipping the script. She told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was just insecure because I didn't trust her. She said Jake was just a friend, that I was overreacting. But her tone was defensive, her eyes darted around, and her hands kept fiddling with her phone. I could see the cracks in her facade. She was lying, and she knew I knew it. That realization made my blood boil even more. I decided to play it cool for now. I told her I needed some time to think, but inside I was already planning my next move. I started digging into her digital footprint, email accounts, social media, bank statements. I wanted to see if I could find any more proof of her infidelity. I found out she'd been exchanging messages with Jake almost daily, some of them explicit. She'd even sent him pictures. That was the final nail in the coffin. She was cheating on me with my best friend, and she had no intention of stopping. But the worst was yet to come. While going through her emails, I stumbled on something I didn't expect, an email from a lawyer discussing the sale of our house. My heart sank. I'd told her I wasn't interested in selling, and I definitely hadn't signed anything. I confronted her about it, and she dismissed it as a mistake, claiming she'd handled it herself because she knew I was too busy. Yeah, right. She forged my signature to sell our family home, and she didn't even bother to tell me. The house was our biggest asset, and she just handed it over to a stranger for $500,000. I felt sick. The betrayal was one thing, but this was outright theft. How could she do that? How could she lie, cheat, and then steal from us? I kept replaying that moment in my mind, feeling a mixture of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. I trusted her with everything, and she'd taken it all away in one reckless move. I realized I needed to get legal help fast. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in real estate and family law. She told me I had a case for fraud and that I might be able to reverse the sale or at least hold her accountable. In the meantime, I started planning my next steps. I knew I couldn't stay in the same house with her. The tension was unbearable, and I did trust her anymore. I moved out, renting a small apartment nearby. I wanted to keep my distance, gather more evidence, and figure out how deep her lies went. Every day felt like walking on thin ice. I was angry at her, furious at Jake, and devastated over the loss of my home and my marriage. It was a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, betrayal, and a burning desire for justice. I also started noticing other things, threatening legal notices about a supposed debt I owed, which I knew I didn't. It was clear she was trying to manipulate the situation, maybe even set me up to look bad. I had to stay calm and focused. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. I documented everything, screenshots of messages, copies of emails, bank statements. I knew I had to be prepared for whatever she threw at me next. The whole situation was spiraling out of control, but I refused to be the victim anymore. I was going to fight for what was right, no matter how ugly it got. I spent the next couple of days trying to get my head straight, but honestly, I was just furious. Every time I thought about Lisa and Jake together, my stomach turned. The fact that she'd betrayed me so completely, manipulated our entire life, and then tried to cover it up with lies and forged signatures. It was beyond anything I thought I'd ever have to deal with. I'd always thought we were solid, that we were in this together. Turns out, I was just fooling myself. I got in touch with a lawyer who specialized in real estate fraud and family law. She was sharp, no nonsense, and told me I had a solid case to challenge the sale of our house. She also warned me that Lisa might try to spin things, so I needed to be careful. I gave her everything I had: emails, texts, bank records, the forged documents. She told me to prepare for a fight because Lisa wasn't going to go quietly. That made me even angrier. I didn't want to destroy her, but I also didn't want to be taken advantage of. Meanwhile, I started noticing more threatening legal notices claiming I owed some crazy debt, which I knew was fabricated. She was clearly trying to scare me off or make me look bad. It was all part of her game to keep control. I kept all the notices, took screenshots, and sent everything to my lawyer. I refused to let her manipulate me further. I also started to get calls from her family, her friends, trying to convince me to work things out, but I wasn't buying it. I knew what she was capable of now. One night I found myself sitting alone, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The betrayal, the lies, the stolen money, my home, my trust, my best friend. It felt like my entire world had shattered. I'd always been a straightforward guy, the type to believe in honesty and loyalty. But Lisa had shown me that sometimes the people closest to you can betray you in the worst ways. I was hurt, yes, but I was also determined. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to fight for what was mine, for the truth. And then out of nowhere, a new piece of evidence surfaced. I got a call from a private investigator I'd hired, someone I'd found through a tip. He'd been digging into Lisa's financials, and he uncovered some strange transactions. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into some secret accounts, probably to hide her trail. I couldn't believe it. She was trying to cover her tracks even more. The fact that she'd gone this far to conceal her lies made me realize how dangerous she was. She wasn't just cheating, she was actively trying to cover her ass. That was the moment I decided I had to go all in. I couldn't just sit around and hope she'd come to her senses. I had to take control. I filed a legal claim to reverse the sale of the house, citing forgery and fraud. I also started gathering evidence to prove her affair with Jake, which I knew would be a game changer. If I could show that her motives were driven by greed and betrayal, it would strengthen my case. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, emotionally, financially, and legally. Meanwhile, Lisa kept sending me nasty messages, threatening me with legal action over debts I never owed. She claimed I was trying to ruin her, but I knew the truth. I was just trying to get back what she stole and expose her lies. I was sick of her manipulations, sick of her lies, and sick of feeling like I was losing everything. I realized I had to be prepared for whatever she threw my way next. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my life from someone I'd trusted blindly for years. I knew I'd have to stay strong and keep fighting, no matter how dirty she played it. The days that followed felt like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every morning I'd wake up hoping this was all some bad dream, but the reality was worse than I could imagine. Lisa's lies kept piling up and her threats grew more aggressive. I was getting legal notices almost daily, claims that I owed her money, that I was trying to ruin her reputation. It was clear she was trying to manipulate the situation, maybe even set me up to look like the bad guy. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I kept pushing forward with my lawyer. We filed the paperwork to challenge the sale of the house. The evidence I'd gathered was damning: emails, forged signatures, bank transactions that showed her funneling money into secret accounts. I also had the private investigator's report, confirming her attempts to hide her financial trail. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her lies went. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. Meanwhile, I started to confront some of the consequences of her actions. I learned that she'd already spent some of the money from the house sale, probably on Jake, possibly on herself. I found out she'd bought expensive jewelry, taken lavish trips, and even paid off some of her credit cards. It made me sick to think she'd blown our savings on her affair. All the while, I was left with nothing but a broken heart and a sense of betrayal I couldn't shake. One night, I had a long conversation with my brother, Mike. I told him everything: the affair, the house sale, the forged signature, the legal notices. He was furious, just like me. "You gotta fight this, man," he said. "She's trying to screw you over and you've got to make sure she pays for it." His words gave me a boost of strength. I realized I couldn't let her win, no matter how much she tried to intimidate me or spin her lies. I had to stand my ground. Then, things took a sudden turn. I received a call from a different lawyer, someone who specialized in criminal fraud. Apparently, my evidence was strong enough to pursue criminal charges against her for forging my signature and attempting to sell the house illegally. I was stunned. I hadn't even considered that she could face jail time, but the thought of her going to jail for what she did made me feel a strange mix of relief and anger. Justice wasn't just about recovering money anymore. It was about making sure she paid for her betrayal. While all this was happening, Lisa kept sending me threatening texts, more legal notices, accusations, and even some outright insults. She called me paranoid, crazy, and jealous, trying to deflect from her own guilt. But I knew better. I'd seen the receipts, the emails, the forged documents. I'd seen her kiss Jake. I'd seen her sell our house behind my back. There was no denying what she was capable of. I didn't respond to her messages anymore. I just kept my head down, focusing on building my case and protecting myself. I also started reaching out to people I trusted, friends, family, anyone who could help me stay grounded. A few of them advised me to keep a low profile, avoid confrontations, and let the legal process run its course. I listened, but inside I was boiling. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused. I wanted her to understand that her lies and betrayal had consequences. I was ready to fight for everything I had left. The most shocking part was discovering that she'd already hidden some of the money from the house sale in offshore accounts, probably to make sure I couldn't get to it. I felt betrayed by her again, but I also felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't going down without a fight. I was determined to expose her lies, reclaim what was mine, and make sure she paid for her treachery. I knew this was only the beginning, but I was ready for whatever came next. The truth was finally starting to surface, and I wasn't going to let her bury it. The legal battle was dragging on, and each day brought new surprises, some good, some bad. I'd never been involved in anything like this before, but I knew I had to stay sharp. Lisa's lies were starting to unravel completely. The evidence I presented showed she forged my signature on the house sale documents, and the bank statements proved she'd taken that $500, $0, and hidden most of it. My lawyer warned me that she might try to spin it all as a misunderstanding, but I knew better. This was calculated, deliberate theft and betrayal. One afternoon, I got a call that changed everything. The court had scheduled a hearing to freeze all her accounts, including the offshore ones. She was panicked, I could tell. She called me nonstop, trying to intimidate me, claiming I was ruining her life, but I didn't buy it anymore. I was done being the victim. I had the proof, and I was going to see this through. The court date was set for 2 weeks out, and I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. I was finally taking control, but I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. In the meantime, I kept digging into her financials. I hired a private investigator to track her movements and transactions. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into accounts in the Caribbean, probably to hide her assets. I also discovered she'd been talking to a real estate lawyer in another state, trying to set up some new shell companies to shield her assets further. The depth of her deception was staggering. She planned this for months, maybe even longer. Her attitude shifted as well. She became more aggressive, sending me angry texts and legal notices, claiming I was trying to ruin her reputation. She insisted she was the victim, that I was paranoid and jealous. I couldn't believe her lies anymore. The woman I'd loved and trusted for so many years was a master manipulator. She was trying to paint herself as the innocent victim, but I wasn't buying it. I had seen too much, and I had the evidence to back me up. The day of the court hearing arrived. I sat there, nervous but determined. My lawyer presented the evidence of forgery, the bank statements, and the offshore accounts. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that I was overreacting, that she had done nothing wrong, but the judge wasn't convinced. The court granted the freeze on her assets, and I felt a small sense of victory. It wasn't over yet, but I was finally getting some justice. That night I sat alone in my apartment, exhausted but relieved. I looked around at the modest furniture, the empty space where our house once stood, and thought about everything I'd lost: my home, my trust, my best friend, and my wife. But I also thought about what I'd gained: clarity, strength, and a resolve I didn't know I had. I realized that sometimes life throws you the worst betrayals, but it also gives you the chance to stand up and fight back. I knew Lisa wouldn't accept defeat easily. I was expecting her to come back with more lies, more manipulations, but I was ready. I had the proof. I had the law on my side, and I wasn't going to let her destroy what little was left of my life. The battle wasn't over, but I'd already won a crucial round. I was learning that sometimes the only way to survive betrayal is to confront it head-on. no matter how painful it gets. I was prepared to see this through to the end, for myself and for the truth. In the weeks that followed the court ruling, things started to move faster than I expected. Lisa's world was crumbling, her offshore accounts were seized, her assets frozen, and her attempts at spinning the story fell flat in front of the judge. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the way she tried to reach out with more threats and false apologies, but I wasn't having any of it. I'd learned the hard way that trust was a fragile thing, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. I didn't want her back in my life, not after what she'd done. My focus was on rebuilding, on reclaiming what was mine, and on making sure she paid for her betrayal. The legal process took its course. She was charged with forgery, fraud, and theft. The judge ordered her to pay back every penny from the house sale, plus interest, and to cover my legal costs. The offshore accounts were liquidated, and I finally saw some of the money I'd lost, some small comfort in the chaos. But the biggest relief was knowing that I stood up for myself, that I hadn't let her manipulate me into accepting her lies anymore. As she faced the consequences, Lisa's facade crumbled completely. She became bitter, angry, and vengeful, but I refused to stoop to her level. I stayed focused on my own healing. I moved out of the apartment, found a new place, and started rebuilding my life from scratch. It wasn't easy, trusting again, opening up to new people, and learning to live without the woman I thought I knew. But I knew that I deserved better, and I refused to let her destroy what little remained of my integrity. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from this nightmare. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you resilience. It shows you who your real friends are and forces you to confront your own strength. I've come to understand that sometimes the most painful experiences are the ones that make you stronger in the long run. I've also learned not to ignore the small signs, those little doubts and suspicions that you brush aside until it's almost too late. To anyone out there dealing with a betrayal like this, I'll say this: trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight back. You might feel powerless at first, but the truth has a way of surfacing. And when it does, hold on to it. Be relentless. Because in the end, justice isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your life and dignity. I'm still healing, still putting the pieces back together, but I'm finally moving forward. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. This experience has shown me that even in the darkest moments, there's a flicker of hope. Hope that truth will come out, that justice will be served, and that you can come out stronger on the other side. And for now, that's enough.